So, Jimmy Kimmel just got canceled. Not because of ratings, not by advertisers, but by a thin-skinned man who cannot take a joke.
And the mega crowd calls us snowflakes? Please, they melt at room temperature, wusses.
And watching this dumpster fire from north of the border, you probably thought, well, thank God that can't happen in Canada. We're too polite, too rules-based.
We thought so too, so we dug into it, and what we found is scary.
Yes, because there is a playbook for muzzling a show without touching a law. It goes like this. Hint at regulatory pain, let the lawyers panic, and watch executives self-censor.
That's what we just saw. ABC pulled Jimmy Kimmel live indefinitely. Within hours, Nexstar told ABC affiliates to preempt the show. Trump took a victory lap, and the FCC chair leaned on broadcasters.
And here's what most people miss. Supposedly, the FCC isn't the opinion police. It's supposed to care about indecency hours on old-school broadcasts, not bruised egos.
This wasn't law, it was leverage, and leverage works.
So how does it kill free speech? Simple. First, bookers cancel guests. Let's not risk it this week. Then writers, they sand down monologues. They cut the sharp lines and add a softer tag. The standards and legal, well, they start pre-approving jokes like they're explosives. And affiliates, they preempt just to be safe. Then there's the advertisers. They ask, is this segment going to be a problem?
That's chilling. You don't need a courtroom when everyone gets the message.
Call it what it is. It is overreach. A political shove dressed as standards.
And the worst part, it sets a precedence. One threat works once, and suddenly every host knows where the tripwire is.
Today, it's a late-night punchline. Tomorrow, it's an interview that never gets booked. That is how free speech dies. Quietly, by paperwork and panic.
So that's the US move. Now the question that matters to us is, could anything like this work in Canada?
And you know what? That question keeps me up at night. History's pretty loud on this. Authoritarians don't start with tanks. They start by shrinking who gets to speak. Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge, Germany in the 1930s, imperial dynasties in China. Different eras, same first move. Silence the critics, control the stories.
And we're watching a modern version in real time. This isn't just late night drama, it's a warning.
The good news? Canada built guardrails. They're not perfect, but they're real. 3 big bumpers that keep politicians' fingers off of that mute button.
First bumper, the charter. If a government wants to mess with speech, it has to climb a legal mountain. The Oakes test. That means you have to prove any limit is necessary, narrow, and reasonable. The I don't like how he talks to me isn't a legal argument, it's a Yelp review.
The second bumper? The Canadian Broadcast Standards Council, the CBSC. When people shout, I'm offended, it goes there first. They cool the temperature, run a real process, and keep regulators from body checking a show just because social media is having a meltdown.
Third bumper? Cabinet is not your program director. Ministers can tinker with license decisions and they can send them back and set them aside, but they don't get to phone the CRTC and cancel Tuesday night because somebody's ego is bruised. Try it and courts will show up with clipboards and a very loud whistle.
Have we ever yanked a license because a politician got roasted here in Canada? Basically, no. When licenses do get whacked, it's for repeated rule breaking, not one spicy monologue.
Translation, our system is boring on purpose. Paperwork, process, judges. And boring rules beat loud bullies. That's how we keep democracy standing and power on a leash.
Okay, but Kimmel's case wasn't about rules. It was about power. Let's follow the money. Nexstar didn't just preempt Kimmel for fun. They're busy trying to swallow Tegna in a $6.2 billion deal.
And here's a tiny problem for them. U.S. laws cap national TV ownership at 39% of households, and so they should. But this merger would blow past that. Translation, you don't get there unless the FCC changes or waives that cap.
Right. Well, the FCC is refreshing the record on whether to modify, keep, or kill that cap. What a convenient moment to be obedient. And now, U.S. Democrats are demanding the FCC chair resign for leaning on broadcasters while his agency is weighing a merger that needs his sign-off. In other words, the regulator pulls the strings and the networks, they have to dance.
Sure, it's Democratic leaders making the demands, so they can't do much and can't fire the FCC chair.
But they can crank up the spotlight, just not with strongly worded letters. They need hearings and headlines. Or be like Eric Swalwell. He wore a Kimmel hat and said, I want to make it clear. There's going to be a Democratic majority in just over a year. And to the FCC chairperson and anyone involved in these dirty deals, you better get a lawyer.
That's assuming there will be a midterm election. Trump is breaking so many laws, I don't think he'll allow any more elections. But that's a whole other video that we're going to be talking about on Sunday.
So, could that kind of power grab work here in Canada? We'll do the bad news first. Canada already runs on concentration, right? Think telecom, airlines, media. Power exists.
Airlines? Well, choice is theoretical. There's Air Canada and WestJet, who own most of the domestic seats. Air Canada alone hovers at around the 40% mark.
And media? Well, a handful of conglomerates, Bell, Rogers, Chorus, Postmedia, they control a ton of channels and papers. Every time they get efficient, reporters go, and so do City Hall, school board, and courthouse stories.
And let's be honest about influence. US money is already inside parts of Canadian news. Postmedia's main financial backer is a US hedge fund, and the gatekeepers are American. Meta, Google, YouTube, X. Even when ownership is Canadian, the megaphone often isn't.
Now, the part that still matters. Big moves have to run a maze, not just go through one door. The CRTC handles broadcasting licenses, the Competition Bureau/Tribunal, they handle market power, and the industry minister gets a say on spectrum and transfers.
Obviously, the maze doesn't always stop the consolidation, but it does slow the stampede and it creates a paper trail.
Which is why a political do this or else scenario during a live deal would be really risky.
So could a Canadian network still flinch to look cooperative while chasing a license renewal or an ownership transfer? Well, humans are humans. But Cabinet can't phone the CRTC and kill Tuesday's episode. Their formal powers are mostly about licenses, and judges love sniffing for overreach.
The bigger Canadian risk isn't one midnight axing, it's the slow drip. Budget squeezes, friendly appointments, and big, vague policy directions that nudge the regulator. Okay, well, speaking of pressure and power, let's talk about the guy who wants the keys to the shot.
Oh, Exhibit A, Poilievre's Defund CBC anthem.
Not fix it, kill it. English CBC off the map, Radio Canada spared for optics. And then what? You torch the only broadcaster that still shows up where private media doesn't.
CBC is the stuff that no spreadsheet loves, but every country needs. Local news in towns advertisers ignore. Emergency alerts when cell towers go down. Northern and Indigenous coverage. French and English public service. International bureaus when it's dangerous. Radio that isn't wall-to-wall rage bait.
Call it what it is. He wants to weaken public media and strengthen the loudest corporations. Because CBC isn't just a channel, it's a floor for standards and salaries. You think US culture wars are loud now? Wait until Ottawa's news diet is whatever trends on billionaire-owned apps.
What brings us to Exhibit B, the platform play.
Pierre says scrap C11, gut C18, slap a free speech sticker on it. Pfft. Translation, hand the steering wheel back to a couple of tech bros.
These aren't neutral librarians. They're ad dollars tuned to outrage. One day, they throttle news to win a standoff. The next, they boost whatever melts the most eyeballs.
You don't need to phone a regulator to kill comedy or journalism if you starve the ecosystem that funds it.
And let's not forget the online harms file. He's waving it off as speech control.
Look, nobody wants taste police. But tear it all down without a plan for doxing, death threats, and deepfakes? That's not freedom. That's a shrug while the worst people run the place.
So no, this isn't call the regulator and axe the monologue. It's bigger and sneakier. Change the rules, starve the outlets, and let the biggest players pick the winners.
Which brings us back to the question, could a US-style cancel by pressure fly up here at all? Maybe, but there are consequences in Canada that runs face first into the charter, the CBSC buffer, and a judge with reading glasses.
Also, this is Canada. We literally have a primetime show that roasts prime ministers for sport. This Hour Has 22 Minutes has been parroting PMs and MPs for decades. Half the time, the politicians show up for the bit.
Right? Our leaders take the joke, or at least they pretend to, because the culture expects it. Comedy is part of the civic diet here.
We're not perfect, but we do have a different reflex. We do satire. We roll our eyes, we invite the sketch right onto the hill steps and take the selfie.
So could an exec still panic? Sure, someone can always overreact. But a naked political takedown? Well, that would be legally wobbly and culturally weird.
US late night looks like a demolition derby. Canada's more of a rule-based parking lot with a meter maid, a bylaw number, and a comedian heckling from the sidewalk. Listen, we're living in scary, cynical times, but we have to keep speaking up.
We pivoted this channel because we've traveled to too many places without freedom of speech, without women's rights, without LGBTQ+ rights, and basic human rights.
We don't want that here, not on our watch.
If you believe in democracy, help keep this microphone on.
Join the A-Team, sign up for our Substack, Unfiltered North.
And if you still love the travel side of our lives, hit subscribe on the Planet D Travel. We're posting a new travel video every single day.
And make sure to subscribe to this channel with your notifications on so you don't miss our political videos. We're ramping up beyond our Sunday roundups.
Sundays aren't going anywhere. Sundays are our political fun days.
But we're adding more throughout the week because we need to speak up, show up, and keep Canada strong.